Hello and welcome. What you're about to watch is part of Brave Growl's alternate timeline, a reimagined exploration of events that should be treated as a work of fiction. The actions of Kurt Cobain, Chris Novoselic, Dave Grohl, and others are not based on reality, though they may feel grounded. Please note that some images you see may be AI generated. This is not part of any larger timeline. And it's important to understand that what follows is not meant to be taken as fact. It's a reflection of a different possibility, meant to evoke thought, not truth. Please approach it with that in mind. Without further ado, let's watch the video. So that you guys have a clue, I'm recapping the first 5 days of April before we start. Let's begin. Real events recap. April 1 to 5th, 1994. April 1st, 1994, Friday. Kurt Cobain was reported to have left the Exodus Recovery Center, a rehab facility in Marina del Rey, California, without formally checking out. He scaled a fence and disappeared. Courtney Love was informed later that day. No one knew where Kurt had gone. He left behind most of his belongings. April 2nd, 1994, Saturday. Courtney began calling friends and private investigators. She was in Los Angeles, growing increasingly desperate. She called Kurt's mother, Wendy O'Connor, and others in Seattle. No one had seen Kurt. April 3rd, 1994, Sunday. Courtney hired private investigator Tom Grant, a former LA County Sheriff's detective. She expressed concern that Kurt was missing and possibly planning to harm himself. She also told conflicting stories about his mental state, which Tom later documented. Grant started working immediately and began gathering information on Cobain's habits and last known locations. April 4th, 1994, Monday. Tom Grant and Dylan Carlson, Kurt's close friend, searched the Lake Washington house, including the main home. Notably, they did not check the greenhouse above the garage, a tragic oversight in real life. Kurt was almost certainly already back in Seattle by then. His movements are unclear, but it's believed he flew home on April 2nd or 3, paid for a gun using Dylan Carlson's help, and hid from everyone. April 5th, 1994, Tuesday, sometime in the morning or early afternoon, Kurt Cobain is believed to have taken his own life, in the greenhouse alone. He left a note addressed largely to his fans, referencing his inability to enjoy music anymore and his deep emotional pain. He was not found until April 8th when an electrician, Gary Smith, arrived to install a security system. Now that you've got the realistic baseline, I'll pivot from here. The Brave Growl timeline starts right now. Let's begin. April 5th, 1994, Tuesday, 07:42 a.m. Trevor T. Bennington sat in a rust-colored '89 Chevy Caprice, parked quietly down 171 Lake Washington Boulevard. He'd been sent by Tom Grant, a private investigator hired by Courtney Love, though this specific visit wasn't authorized by her. Courtney didn't know Trevor existed. Trevor stepped out, zipped up his jacket, and moved toward the side entrance of the Cobain property. He'd gotten a key from Dylan Carlson 3 days earlier. The house was silent. A thin morning mist rolled over the garden, soaking the wooden path toward the detached garage and greenhouse. The door to the greenhouse above the garage was slightly ajar. Trevor entered. Inside, glass panes fogged, piles of discarded clothing, burnt spoons, cigarette butts, and vinyls strewn across the floor. A shotgun leaned against the far wall, loaded, cocked. Kurt Cobain was hunched in a fetal position, twitching slightly, pupils dilated, skin pale. His jeans were soaked in sweat. Next to him, a cracked bottle of Rohypnol, 2 nearly empty blister packs of diazepam, and an uncapped insulin syringe. 08:50 a.m., Trevor immediately called Tom Grant. "He's here," Trevor said, "but it's bad. He's on something heavy, and there's a shotgun. loaded. 1 a.m., Tom Grant's plane from LA had just landed. He called 911 anonymously using a burner phone. There's a man at 171 Lake Washington who needs immediate medical assistance. No names. 8:39 a.m., paramedics arrived with 2 cruisers. Trevor directed them without exposing Kurt's identity. They loaded Kurt Cobain, now barely responsive, heartbeat erratic, into the ambulance. The shotgun was quietly removed and stored by one of the officers who recognized Kurt instantly but didn't report it. A.m., Kurt was admitted to Virginia Mason Hospital. Blood toxicity reports showed high levels of barbiturates and benzodiazepines. Pulse erratic. He vomited twice, spoke incoherently. There's a spiral in my mouth. Get it out. 12:22 p.m. Tom Grant arrived at the hospital and was briefly permitted into the room. Kurt stared at him, blinked slowly, and whispered, "Tell Francis Wise no more." Then he passed out again. 4 p.m. Courtney called Tom. Any updates? Tom lied. Still searching. Got a few leads in Belltown. 6:15 p.m. Dr. Michael Ronald Winston arrived. Bald, dressed in worn corduroy pants, soft voice. He'd worked with musicians before. He recognized immediately that Kurt wasn't in a place for detox centers or high-profile clinics. 7:45 p.m. If he stays in this city, we lose him. He needs privacy and absolute silence. I'll make the call. Whisper Pines. April 6, 1994, Wednesday, 7 a.m., Kurt woke up lucid for the first time since the overdose. 9 a.m., Dr. Winston entered the room. "Kurt, my name's Michael Winston. I'm here to listen, not judge. You've been through something your body shouldn't have survived. Let's give your mind a chance to do the same." Kurt didn't respond, but he didn't look away. 1:30 p.m. Meanwhile, Courtney flew to Los Angeles, allegedly to speak to lawyers. In reality, she was in the Beverly Hills Hotel with friends. Her calls to Tom became more frequent. She kept demanding updates. Tom deflected. 3 p.m., Tom and Winston signed temporary psychiatric transfer papers. Kurt was not formally committed. Instead, it was a voluntary therapeutic transfer to Whisper Pines, a private facility in a remote wooded area north of Seattle. 8:10 p.m., Kurt was sedated and kept under overnight observation. No guitar, no notebook, just silence. April 7, 1994, Thursday, 10:30 a.m., Tom met with Winston outside the hospital. "We move him tomorrow morning. Private driver, no press." Winston nodded. "Don't call it rehab. He's had enough labels." 1 p.m., Kurt spoke briefly. "Is Frances okay?" Winston replied, "Yes, she's safe." Kurt whispered, "Good." Then closed his eyes again. 4:30 p.m., DGC David Geffen Company called Chris Novoselic and Dave Grohl separately. A rep asked, "Have either of you spoken to Kurt in the past week?" Both answered no. Chris began to grow worried. Later he'd tell Rolling Stone, "I felt like something had slipped into a darker gear, like he was behind glass and I couldn't break through." April 8, 1994, Friday, 7 a.m., Kurt was discharged from Virginia Mason Hospital under supervision. Winston drove him personally. No ambulance. Kurt didn't speak during the drive, just watched the trees. 10:20 a.m., arrival at Whisper Pines, a discreet wooded complex of 6 cabins and a main lodge. Staffed by former psych nurses, 2 therapists, and a cook. No signage, no public records, funded privately. Kurt was placed in cabin 2, room included, 1 window, small writing desk, ashtray, and cassette radio. No TV, no visitors allowed. 4:30 p.m., Trevor called Tom. "He's in. Place is quiet. No media. Nobody knows." Tom said, "Keep it that way." April 9, 1994, Saturday, 10 a.m., Kurt met again with Dr. Winston in cabin 2. Winston asked, "Do you want to keep living?" Kurt said nothing for 5 minutes. Then, "I'm not sure yet, but this place, it's not loud." 2 p.m., Chris was spotted by fans at a co-op in Olympia. He didn't speak to press. Privately, he canceled 2 commitments and began planning a short retreat in northern Seattle. Something felt wrong. April 10, 1994, Sunday, 8 a.m., a nurse named Angela left breakfast at Kurt's door. Oats, a boiled egg, coffee. He ate it all. 1 p.m., Winston visited again. Kurt asked, "Am I here to be fixed?" Winston replied, "No, you're here to be listened to." 4 p.m., Courtney tried again to pressure Tom Grant. "Where is he? Did he leave the state?" Tom replied, still following a few leads. He avoided naming Whisper Pines. Chris told a Seattle journalist anonymously, "If Kurt's hiding, it's not because he's selfish. It's because he's collapsing. I've seen that look in his eyes. April 11th, 1994, Monday. Whisper Pines Rehab Center, 9:37 a.m. Kurt sat cross-legged on the porch of Cabin 2, holding a cheap coffee in a styrofoam cup. No cigarettes yet. Staff still had them. A blue spiral notebook sat beside him untouched. He didn't ask for a pen. Michael Ronald Winston, his assigned therapist, showed up around 10:10. He wore the same brown windbreaker as always and sat next to Kurt on the wooden step. "How's sleep?" Winston asked. Kurt gave a short shrug. "Dreams are fucked. You want to talk about them?" "Nope." "Okay." They sat there for almost half an hour in silence. The wind moved some pine branches. That was it. April 12th, 1994, Tuesday. In LA, Courtney was restless. She called Tom Grant 4 times before noon. "You're not telling me something," she said. "He's hiding." Tom wasn't denying it, but he also wasn't telling her the full picture. Meanwhile, at Whisper Pines, Kurt had another session with Winston at 5 p.m. He was calmer, a little less dazed. When Winston asked what he wanted to do with the day, Kurt muttered, "Sleep, draw something, listen to a tape." Winston wrote that down. Low energy, no plans, still watchful. They didn't consider him high risk anymore, but Kurt wasn't improving either. April 13th, 1994, Wednesday, 2 p.m. Mara, one of the staff, found Kurt burning photos in a small metal trash bin behind. They weren't photos of people. They were pages from old journals, lyric sheets, and a Polaroid of a house. "Don't want to keep souvenirs," he said when she asked what he was doing. They didn't stop him. He wasn't violent, just quietly destructive. That evening, Winston took a walk with him around the perimeter trail. It was damp and muddy. Kurt slipped on a patch of wet grass, caught himself, then smirked. "Should have brought a fucking cane." Winston grinned. "We've got one in the office if you want it." Kurt replied, "Just call me Kurt. Mr. Cobain was my dad and he bailed." April 14th, 1994, Thursday. Chris Novoselic anonymously tipped off a Seattle radio host. "Kurt's alive. That's all I can say. He's not okay, but he's not dead." He didn't give a name. Privately, Chris canceled a public appearance in Tacoma. He told his girlfriend he was tired of everything. The band, the noise, the gossip. He packed a bag and left for a quiet property up near Arlington. Chickens, a shed, some hills, a retreat. At Whisper Pines, Kurt began sketching again. A warped fish tank, 3-legged fish, and cracked glass. No title. He wouldn't explain it when asked. April 15th, 1994. Friday, Tom Grant drove out to Whisper Pines. He wasn't cleared for a visit officially, but Winston made an exception. The meeting was short. No Courtney talk. "Tom, you look better than last week." Kurt, low bar. Tom smiled. "Fair." Kurt squinted at him. "Why are you really here?" "I just don't think your story's over." Kurt laughed once, low. "There's no story, just reruns." Later that night, Winston noted Kurt refused meds again. Said, "I'm done with chemicals, even the ones that help." April 16th, 1994, Saturday. Courtney phoned MTV, left a voicemail under a fake name. "Kurt Cobain is missing, and I'm scared he's hurt himself." The media grabbed it instantly. Seattle radio stations went full Nirvana rotation by noon. Fans showed up outside Veretta Park and in front of Sub Pop's old building. Kurt had no idea. Whisper Pines kept him fully isolated from outside media. They gave him a worn acoustic guitar that afternoon. He played a few disjointed chords, nothing solid. When Mara walked by, he muttered, "Think MTV Unplugged would have booked me for this shit?" She didn't laugh. He smirked anyway. April 17th, 1994, Sunday. Dave Grohl left a message on Chris's answering machine. "Think I'm going to stay in LA for a bit, make some demos, do something. If you talk to him, tell him I'm not pissed. I'm just tired." Chris didn't respond. He was already gone, sleeping at the farmhouse near Arlington, cutting firewood, drinking shitty gas station coffee, and sketching chickens. He didn't mention Nirvana once. April 18th, 1994, Monday. Kurt refused therapy that day. "Same conversation every time," he told Winston. "You ask how I feel, I say fine. You ask what I want, I say nothing. Skip to the credits." Winston nodded. "All right, no session today. Notebook's still there if you want it." Kurt didn't pick it up. That night, he asked for one cigarette. They allowed it. He smoked it slowly on the roof of Cabin 2, lying flat on his back, looking at nothing. April 19th, 1994, Tuesday. Winston met with the staff. "He's not in crisis, but he's frozen. I'm recommending he stay here another 3 weeks." They agreed. Meanwhile, Courtney went behind Tom Grant's back and hired a second private investigator, Hal Raymond, former LAPD. No nonsense. She wanted faster results. Spin magazine published a blurb. Rumors fly that Nirvana may never tour again. An anonymous source claims Kurt's out for good. No one confirmed it. April 20th, 1994, Wednesday, Kurt asked Mara for a haircut. Just the back and sides, nothing major. She did it with scissors and a kitchen towel around his neck. When it was done, he looked in the mirror and said, "Not awful." Christ was sketching out song structures at the farm. Weird acoustic punk ideas. No vocals, just chord shapes and scribbled notes. He wasn't thinking about Nirvana, at least not on the surface. Dave Grohl started jamming in an LA studio. No band name, no lineup, just friends and distortion pedals. Back at Whisper Pines, Kurt played a few notes on the acoustic, then fell asleep with the guitar still across his chest. May 1st, 1994. Sunday by morning, rumors had already hit Seattle like a pulse. Kurt Cobain was dead. No body, no photo, just untraceable whispers. The kind people pass along because silence is heavier than lies. In a quiet room at Whisper Pines, Kurt sat still on a worn sofa, staring at a window that didn't open. When Rosa brought in the pills, he didn't look at her. "They're just there," she said. He didn't answer. She left. Somewhere in LA, Courtney read the same rumor and faxed press clippings. She didn't cry. She lit a cigarette and waited for confirmation. By night, she heard from a contact up north that he was alive, but barely fucking human. She didn't say anything, just picked up the phone and called her lawyer. May 2nd, 1994, Monday. Whisper Pines staff noted Kurt's silence as consistent. He didn't leave the room until past noon. He walked the perimeter path outside the buildings with a cigarette behind his ear. No shoes. He refused the pills again. "Maybe tomorrow," he mumbled. That same afternoon, Courtney met with her lawyer in a loft apartment in Westwood. She brought Ava Desmond. The idea was simple: file for divorce in slow motion. Quietly. Methodically. Just enough to keep everything in her hands. "He's going to fuck himself over," she said. "I just need to not be holding the match when he does." May 3rd, 1994, Tuesday. A nurse noted in her report, "Patient is eating little, lost track of time, avoids group activities." Kurt didn't talk to anyone that day, not Rosa, not Winston, not the other patients. He spent 2 hours in the library room flipping through an old atlas. He stopped on the page with Washington State and traced the highways with his finger, slowly, like looking for something he'd lost. May 4th, 1994, Wednesday. Courtney received official confirmation from Whisper Pines. Kurt was still under watch, still refusing meds, still complicated. That word came up more than once. She rolled her eyes when Ava read it aloud. Complicated? That's what they call men who disappear for a month now? She began preparing the first round of divorce papers. "I just want to be clean when it falls apart." Meanwhile, Pat Smear quietly left LA. A friend drove him to LAX. He didn't tell the press, didn't call Dave or Christ. He landed in Wisconsin that evening, rented a small house and brought 2 books and a coat. When asked why, he said, "Because this isn't going to end well." May 5th, 1994, Thursday. Kurt sat by the lake on the edge of the facility, alone. No notebook, no smoke, just the wind in a floating paper cup someone else had dropped. He spoke 5 words all day. "No, I'm not going back." It's unclear who asked what. The staff didn't press. May 6th, 1994, Friday. Courtney received the first wave of media inquiries about Nirvana's future. She ignored them all. Her focus was on legal threads now, how much of the estate was vulnerable, who was going to dig where, and how quickly she could insulate herself from whatever public collapse was next. She didn't say the word divorce out loud until that night. She called her mother. "It's over," she said. "He's a fucking ghost." May 7th, 1994. Saturday, Kurt didn't sleep the night before. The staff let him be. He was quiet, not violent. At 9 a.m., Rosa found him sitting on the floor in the hallway just outside the small chapel room. "Want a chair?" she asked. "No, floor's fine." He stayed there for over an hour. At one point, he leaned his head back against the wall and closed his eyes. No prayer. No conversation. Just breathing. May 8th, 1994, Sunday. Mother's Day. No phone calls came for him. No letters. No cards. He spent the morning lying on his side under the porch overhang behind cabin 3, watching ants move across a crack in the cement. May 9th, 1994, Monday. Courtney signed the first set of divorce prep papers. They weren't filed, just drafted. She called Ava after. "I don't care if he gets clean. I care if he talks." Ava replied, "Then let's keep him quiet." Later that day, a call came from Whisper Pines, asking if Kurt had any outside plans for housing post-treatment. Courtney said, "I'm not in charge of his future anymore." May 10th, 1994, Tuesday. Kurt refused meds again. He spoke up more that day, but only when asked direct questions. No lashing out, just flat tones. When Winston asked how he was feeling, Kurt said, "Like the edge of a table, no one notices until they hit it." Winston didn't know what to say. May 11th, 1994, Wednesday. Pat sent a short letter to Chris. No return address. Just, "Staying up here, it's better for the nerves. You okay?" Chris didn't answer it. He just folded it and put it in a drawer next to old Nirvana rehearsal tapes. He hadn't listened to those in weeks. May 12th, 1994, Thursday. Courtney made a call to Trevor's office. His assistant said he was unavailable indefinitely. "Coward," she said, then hung up. Later that night, she took a long bath and played voicemails on speaker. One was from a friend who said, "They're talking about it like it's over. The band, the marriage, all of it." She laughed, not out of joy, just out of disbelief. May 13th, 1994, Friday, Kurt said very little. He took 2 of the 4 pills offered to him. Winston didn't question it. Neither did Rosa. He ate half a breakfast, drank a cold coffee, and sat outside in a lawn chair facing away from everyone. A child visiting another patient waved at him. He didn't wave back, but he nodded. May 14th, 1994, Saturday. A nurse's log. Patient appears still and lucid. No agitation, no participation either. He was left alone most of the day. No notes, no conversation. Not even Rosa spoke to him unless necessary. That night, it rained, and he watched water pool at the corner of the gutter like it was trying to mean something. May 15th, 1994, Sunday. Kurt spent the morning at Whisper Pines doing nothing. He refused to attend group therapy that day, mumbling to his therapist, Michael Ronald Winston, about how there's no point. Winston, always calm and bald as Kurt would jokingly point out, didn't push him. Instead, he let Kurt vent, often catching snide comments about his hair, a running joke between them. Kurt seemed to have accepted that he wasn't going anywhere soon, but he was growing restless. The monotony of the place was getting to him. He was more irritated than usual. Pat Smear had been reaching out, slowly becoming the one person Kurt could stand talking to. Their conversations were light, usually just banter about music, life on the road, and what the future held. Chris Novoselic was already far away, retreating to a farm in northern Seattle, as he had planned. He felt like he needed a break from everything. He was happy there, helping with farm work, getting some mental clarity after everything had piled up. It was a relief for him. Meanwhile, Dave Grohl was busy working on his own music, the early ideas for his future solo work starting to take shape. He hadn't stopped thinking about Kurt, but he didn't want to crowd him. May 16th, 1994, Monday, Kurt took a walk alone outside. He wasn't allowed to go far, but the small courtyard and grassy area were enough. He didn't speak much today, and the usual staff noted a significant mood shift. Some moments he was calm and engaged with his surroundings. Other moments, his eyes seemed distant, as though he was trying to escape. Pat Smear called again, offering a visit, but Kurt declined. Still, they chatted on the phone later, laughing about nothing. Kurt appreciated these simple distractions. Courtney Love had no contact with him today, and Kurt preferred it that way for now. May 17th, 1994, Tuesday. Kurt seemed to be in a better mood today. He had a somewhat productive session with Michael Ronald Winston, during which he actually answered questions instead of mumbling or withdrawing. Winston noted it as a sign of progress. Kurt even joked about his own self-destructive behavior, acknowledging that, "I'm tired of hating myself." Pat Smear visited the next day, staying for an hour, talking mostly about the music scene and life outside. Kurt liked hearing about things outside the bubble of Whisper Pines. Chris's phone call was short and filled with updates from the farm. He told Kurt about some random things that had happened. It felt like a normal conversation, and Kurt liked hearing his old friend's voice, even if he didn't talk much in return. Chris had made the right decision to take a break, and he sounded better, less weighed down. May, the tension in Kurt was building. He felt trapped, even in a place that was supposed to help him. His mind kept circling around his problems, his marriage, and the band. He was angry again today, at himself, at the world. Michael Ronald Winston talked with him about the possibility of Kurt seeking a legal separation from Courtney, but Kurt didn't want to go that route just yet. You're that way. May 19th, 1994, Thursday. Kurt had a more isolated day. He sat in his room, staring at the wall for hours. His mood seemed to have flipped again. At times he could hold a conversation, but other moments he couldn't even look at anyone. He jotted a few words in his journal, barely coherent, more like disjointed thoughts. Dave Grohl reached out later, but Kurt barely spoke. His mood had shifted from angry to indifferent. Chris had sent him a letter. Kurt didn't feel like reading it, but took it to his bed later that night and read through it quietly. Chris's letter was light, talking about nothing too heavy, just life on the farm and how things had calmed down. No conflict. He didn't know where he stood with Courtney or Nirvana. He couldn't settle his thoughts. In therapy, Michael Ronald Winston asked Kurt about his past with Courtney, and Kurt opened up, saying he felt like he was losing control of everything. It was the first time he had expressed that openly. Pat Smear dropped by in the afternoon. Kurt greeted him with a small smile. The two spent the day talking about the music industry and joking about ridiculous band stories from the past. Kurt was still unsure about the future. He couldn't tell if he was better or worse than before, but he tried to hold on to the small things that kept him grounded. He couldn't get out of. Winston gently pushed him to face the reality of the situation with Courtney. Kurt didn't know if he could bring himself to file for separation. He was still trying to figure out what he wanted. Pat Smear came to visit again, and Kurt seemed somewhat lifted, but it was temporary. His mood was all over the place. May 24 to 30, 1994, Tuesday, Monday, and the last week of May was a slow buildup. Kurt was trying to hold on to a sense of normalcy, but was increasingly frustrated by the confinement of Whisper Pines. Chris remained distant, but sent occasional updates. He was feeling stronger, more clear-headed. Dave Grohl continued to work on his solo projects in silence. He kept his distance from Kurt, but didn't forget about him. Pat Smear remained a steady presence. Whenever Kurt allowed himself to relax, Pat was there to pull him out of his darker places. June 1st, 1994, Kurt Cobain leaves Whisper Pines quietly in the early afternoon. No grand scene. No one sees him off except for Michael Ronald Winston, who stands outside the front entrance with a file folder under his arm, watching Kurt with concern. "Don't isolate again," Winston says. Kurt doesn't answer, but he pauses at the passenger door of the black rental Toyota. "You're bald," he says without turning. Winston cracks a smile. "You always say that when you're about to do something stupid." Kurt shuts the door and they don't talk again. He settles into a small, rundown rental house in Olympia. Northwest side, cheap. The windows barely close, the heater buzzes when turned on, but it's quiet, and that's all he needs. For now, he's alone. June 2nd. June 4th. He does nothing. Literally nothing. Sleeps long hours, doesn't shower. He watches whatever VHS tapes were already in the house, an old copy of Apocalypse Now, some Monty Python, and 2 horror movies he fast-forwards through. He eats soup from the can, some cereal. One day he walks down to the corner store and buys cigarettes, 3 microwave burritos, and Advil. The clerk doesn't recognize him. Michael Winston calls twice. No answer. Courtney is made aware by one of her legal reps that Kurt has officially left rehab. She's quiet on the phone, then asks them, "Is he still alive?" "Yes." "That's good," she says before hanging up. June 5th, June 7th. Chris Novoselic has been out of Seattle, up in Whatcom County, staying with friends who run a farm. He reads, mostly. Spends time walking in the woods, not hiding, but retreating from everything, the media, Nirvana, and even his own thoughts. But on June 5th, he gets a short letter, no return address. All it says is, "I'm not dead. Don't get poetic about it. Olympia." It's signed with a small drawing, not a name, just a cartoon of a fish with an X for one eye. Chris drives down on June 7th. June 8th. Chris and Kurt sit on the porch of the Olympia house for most of the afternoon. There are long silences. "You look like shit," Chris says. Kurt laughs. Just once. I thought you were in Alaska or something, Kurt mutters. Almost. No music is discussed. No what's next. It's mostly idle things. Chris talks about a strange goat he met on the farm. Kurt talks about a movie he watched called They Live and how the fight scene goes on for way too long. You still talk to Dave? Not really. Same. They don't solve anything, but they don't need to. They sit until it gets cold and then Chris leaves, promising he'll come back. June 9th, June 11th. Courtney's legal team pushes harder. There are talks of joint custody, of potential psychiatric evaluations. A divorce lawyer is formally assigned to Kurt. Steve A. Harry Haynes, a man in his 50s who speaks in short, clipped sentences and doesn't ask about music. Kurt actually likes him. He doesn't pretend to care about who I am, Kurt says to himself one night. He gets a haircut, messy but clean. He doesn't explain why. June 12th, June 15th. Kurt begins writing in notebooks again. Not songs. Not yet. Just lines, observations, scribbles. The ceiling leaks when it rains, but only when I'm watching. Stuff like that. He watches Taxi Driver twice in a row, then writes a small note. The wrong people admire this movie. On June 14th, Courtney shows up outside the Olympia house. Kurt doesn't answer the door. She waits for 30 minutes before sliding a note under it. You're not a ghost. Call me. He doesn't. June 16th, June 18th. He wakes up early for the first time in weeks. Makes coffee, burns toast. It's almost normal. He calls Michael Winston. You were right, he says. About what? I do isolate. You're calling me now. That's the opposite of isolating. Kurt exhales. Yeah. They talk for 40 minutes. Winston encourages small routines. Take a walk at the same time every day. Watch one movie, not 3. Eat something warm. Write 3 sentences a day. Not more. I can do that, Kurt says. That's doable. June 19th, June 20th. Kurt begins humming to himself again. Not full melodies, just tones. He buys a cheap used acoustic guitar from a pawn shop. No strings, he asks for nylon. He restrings it himself while washing Blue Velvet. Chris visits again on the 20th. They eat pizza on the porch. You're here, Chris says. Not in a big way. No, but it's something. Kurt nods. Yeah. Courtney's lawyers leak something to the press, suggesting Kurt may not be mentally fit to retain full custody. Kurt reads it in the newspaper, then folds it. Fuck 'em, he says. June 21 to 24th, 1994. Kurt begins most days with cigarettes and weak coffee. He's not spiraling, not really, but he's not clean either. He keeps his mess small. Some empty bottles stack up beside the couch. He drinks at night alone, usually with a film playing in the background. Recent favorites: The Last Detail, Strawshek, Wings of Desire. Chris keeps coming around. Every few days, he stops by for a couple hours. Sometimes they don't talk much. Sometimes they do. One night, they stay up talking about fathers. Both had complicated ones, and the things they didn't want to pass on. Chris doesn't like talking about that stuff. But with Kurt, it's easier. Familiar. Courtney's legal team eases off a little, maybe realizing that public pressure won't work if Kurt stays quiet and semi-stable. They don't send anything aggressive for once. No new threats, no custody filings. It's still tense, but the fire dims. Winston picks up on that and brings it up during a phone call. You two need to talk face to face, Winston says. No, we really don't, Kurt answers, but you want to see Frances, right? Silence. I do, Kurt admits. Then maybe talking to Courtney isn't the worst road to that. June 25 to 28th, 1994. Kurt agrees, but only on the condition it's casual, short, in public. Winston sets it up. June 27th, they meet at a cafe in Seattle, close to where Courtney's lawyer has an office. It's quiet inside. A Monday, midday, no press, no fans. They talk like acquaintances, not ex-lovers. She asks about his sleep. He lies and says it's better. He asks about Frances. Courtney says she's been giggling a lot lately, like she knows she's messing with me. That makes Kurt smile. They don't fight. They don't touch. They don't solve anything. But for 37 minutes, they are two tired people in the same room without venom. On June 28th, he sees Frances. Courtney brings her to a small park on Queen Anne Hill with a swing set and a broken drinking fountain. Frances doesn't say much at first. Then, slowly, she climbs into Kurt's lap. She starts playing with the drawstring on his hoodie. Kurt doesn't cry, but his hands shake for the next hour. He walks home that night, smoking nonstop. June 29th, July 2nd, 1994. Dave Grohl moves back to Seattle. He calls first, says he's not sure what he's coming back for, but that it feels right. They meet up on June 30th at Christ's place. It's awkward at first. The air still smells like 1993, but then Dave opens a backpack and pulls out a cassette. "I've been recording stuff," he says. Chris eyes it cautiously. Kurt shrugs. "Play it." The song is called Apocalypse. It's raw, loud, drum-heavy, but melodic in a weird way. Not Nirvana, but something real. When it ends, Kurt says, "I like that." Chris says nothing, just nods once. Later that night, Chris corners Dave in the kitchen. "You think it's smart to pull him back into music already?" Dave responds, "He's already there. Might as well let him walk it instead of fall into it." Chris shakes his head. He's not ready. They leave it at that. July 3 to 5, 1994, Kurt buys a 4-track, a cheap one, battered casing. He doesn't use it right away. He just sets it up on the floor next to his mattress and stares at it sometimes. But on the night of July 4th, with a bottle of red wine and a rainstorm tapping the roof, he picks up a guitar and hits record. The tape is just humming, then muttered words, then a line, "Sleep in the sky while the sky sleeps in me." He stops. That's enough. July 6 to 8, 1994, Frances sends him a crayon drawing. Courtney says she made it during breakfast. Kurt pins it on the refrigerator with a bent paperclip. On July 7th, Kurt calls Winston. "I'm not fixed. I'm not going to be fixed." "I'm not asking you to be fixed," Winston replies. "I'm just telling you it's not going to happen. But you're showing up. That's the difference." He drinks again on the night of the 8th, a lot. He doesn't do anything destructive, like just stumbles around the living room with the lights off, muttering quotes from old movies. One of them might be from a foreign film, he's not sure. He laughs at something he can't remember. He goes to bed early. That night, the 4-track is still running. It catches 40 minutes of soft background noise. The last sound is a soft, accidental whisper. "I'm still here." July 9 to 12, 1994. Kurt's sleep starts breaking. Not from stress exactly, just restlessness, like his brain won't shut off. He lies down and blinks into dark for hours. His window is half open. The summer air smells like overripe berries and garbage trucks. He spends most nights watching movies. He finds a stash of foreign VHS tapes at a secondhand store near Capitol Hill. No subtitles, cheap packaging. He picks them up for no reason. One night, around 2 a.m., he puts in a tape labeled only Gav. It's slow, black and white, and strangely beautiful. An old Iranian man loses his cow and descends into madness. Kurt watches the whole thing, even though he doesn't understand a word. He rewinds it and watches it again with the volume lower. The next night, it's Gavazna, the deer, another Iranian movie. He doesn't get the full story, but the tone sticks with him. The people feel real, broken, but proud. There's a song in the credits, something warbled and dusty in a language he doesn't know. The name Dariush is written on the cassette sleeve. Darius, Kurt mutters, smoking in his living room. July 13 to 15th, 1994, the insomnia grows worse. He tries wine, then whiskey, then cold showers. Nothing works. On July 13th, he doesn't sleep at all. Instead, he writes, on a torn piece of notebook paper, "Feels so sorry, origami, something somewhere, origami." He stares at it a long time, folds it into a crooked paper swan, sets it beside the TV. The next day, he records a demo of You Know You're Right. Not the polished version, just his voice and guitar, raw and unfinished. He sees Pat a few days later and hands him the tape. "Do whatever you want with it," Kurt says. "Add guitar or don't. It's okay." Pat nods but doesn't say much. He never does, just slips the tape into his coat pocket. July 16-18, 1994, Winston nudges again. Courtney's open to talking, not court stuff. Just you and her, no lawyers. Kurt hesitates, but agrees. They meet in a public garden in Volunteer Park. Courtney brings coffee. Kurt brings a pack of Reds and an old jacket. They sit beneath a dying tree. The air is awkward but not hostile. She tells him Frances likes horses now. He says he used to be afraid of them. She asks about whisper pines. He deflects. "I'm not mad at you," Courtney says quietly. Kurt doesn't answer, but he doesn't get up either. July 21st, 1994. Dave and Chris come over. It's not official, just pizza, beer, and a busted tape deck. Kurt plays them pieces of new stuff, snippets, mostly. The origami verse, a few strange chord shifts. Dave likes it. Chris listens, reserved. There's a tension, but it's not aggressive, just a difference in pace. Chris wants caution. Dave wants forward motion. Kurt's in the middle, fingers tapping the couch. Not choosing, just watching. July 22 to 24, 1994. Kurt watches Italian TV that night. Some variety show from the 80s. A guy named Toto Cutugno is singing about life and love and time. Kurt doesn't know what he's saying, but something about the melody sticks. It's cheesy, sure, but honest. Later, he walks into the kitchen and finds the origami paper swan still sitting by the sink. He picks it up, studies it, and writes the second verse on its back. Quietly. Barefoot. He hasn't seen Frances in over a week. It's starting to ache again. Not in a screaming way, just slow and constant. That night, he writes a line in his journal, "I want to be a background noise in her life, not a shadow." And that's the end of this completely made up, totally not serious, not even close to legally binding reimagining of what might have happened if Kurt Cobain didn't die in 1994. Just a friendly reminder, this is all dumb, fictional nonsense for entertainment purposes only. It's not a documentary, it's not a psychic reading, and it's not your personal therapy session. Please do not get into a Reddit argument about what Kurt would have done. You're not him, I'm not him, and if he were alive to watch this video, he'd probably turn it off halfway through and go watch the cow again. Please do not sue me. I do not own Nirvana, Washington State, Whisper Pines, or the concept of origami. This is not affiliated with the ghost of Chris Novoselic, Courtney Love's legal team, or Michael Ronald Winston, who I'm pretty sure is a fictional therapist invented somewhere around May. Anyway, thanks for watching, thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you in the next one.